Welcome to DMV Spotlight here in the nation's capital, where we shine a light on the issues impacting D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. I'm Barbara Britt. Well, as we know, during the height of the pandemic, the real estate market in the D.C. area was described with words like red hot and frenzied. And now, as COVID cools off, it appears so is our real estate market. My guest today is Dr. Lisa Sturtevant. She is the real estate economist for Bright MLS. And I want to thank you. She's going to help us put this all together and understand what's happening. Thank you so much for joining me today on DMV Spotlight.
Great, Barbara. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you. So tell us, I know that you all keep track of the market very closely at Bright MLS. Tell us what you are now seeing that is different than what we have seen in these past crazed years.
Well, Barbara, it's really been an about face in the housing market. You used words like red hot and frenzied, and now I think we're definitely seeing a chill in the market. We have seen home sales decline rapidly. We've seen the number of buyers in the market down dramatically, and all of that really can be, the reason for all of that can really go back to these rising mortgage rates that reached past 7% this fall, has really taken a bite out of buyers' purchasing power and left both buyers and sellers on the sidelines.
And it's interesting because those rising interest rates and then mortgage rates down the line a little bit also come at the same time where we have really high inflation. And so that really does put the squeeze on people really on both ends.
Right. Now, we saw that in the Washington area, rising home prices were really creating a lot of affordability challenges for prospective buyers, even before the higher inflation numbers and the higher interest rates that we've seen over the last few months. But as you know, the Federal Reserve was raising those short-term interest rates in an effort to tackle inflation and to tamp down inflation. Unfortunately, that has the effect also of raising mortgage rates. So in an already high-cost housing market, these higher rates have actually made it even more challenging for buyers, particularly first-time buyers, to get into the market here in D.C.
And do you feel like the home prices in this area are going to come down? It is very expensive. It's not the most expensive market, obviously, in the country, but it's pretty expensive to live around this area.
It is very expensive to live around the Washington area. We are also a region that has relatively high incomes as well, so there's a little bit of offsetting. You know, some of the most unaffordable markets tend to be out in California in particular, where the median home price is something like 10 or 11 times what the median household income is. But prices are high here, and I think that as we look toward the end of the year and into next year, we are seeing that home prices are falling from their peak levels. Some of that is seasonal. We tend to see home prices drop off a little bit in the winter from their peaks in the summer. But I anticipate that we will see prices come down here in the Washington area from their peak levels. But let me be very clear, there's no signs of a sort of housing price collapse or any sort of bubble bursting, but rather we will see prices reset to levels that were lower than what they hit earlier this year at the height of the housing market.
Now, we remember during the pandemic that, trying to buy a house, people had multiple offers. People didn't want anybody they didn't even care if they did an inspection. They didn't do any of that. What is happening to that kind of thing, or days on market?
Yeah, it's a very different market now. So the days of multiple offers with offers hundreds of thousands of dollars over list price, those days are over. We're seeing that buyers are taking a little bit more time. The median days on market has increased so that buyers are being a little bit more selective. They're able to ask for things like home appraisals and contingencies. And frankly, buyers have a little bit more leverage on price. But it is still a really challenging market for buyers who do remain in the market, because not only are there fewer buyers in the market, there are also fewer sellers in the market. So it's not like one side of the equation has slowed down. Both sides have. And so it's this contraction. So while buyers have a little bit more leverage on price and sellers do have to be willing to negotiate on concessions, it's still a very tight inventory environment. And if you are a buyer in this market, you still have to be prepared to act when you find the home you want to put an offer on.
And we did see again during the height of the pandemic that some people ended up selling their home. I'm speaking today with Dr. Lisa Sturtevant. She's the real estate economist with Bright MLS. They put their home on the market because they knew they would never get as much money for their home as they would. And it looks like that window has closed.
Well, I think that's right. And I think, there's a couple of things going on here, right? I think that we're starting to see prices come down from their peaks. But what we also saw were many, many homeowners who refinanced their mortgage during the pandemic, and they were able to refinance into a mortgage rate that was let's say below 3%. And so even if the homeowner was thinking that they might want to move, they can see now that if they listed their home and sold their home, they would have to move out of that mortgage with a very, very low rate, and they would have to move into something like a 6.5% or 7% mortgage rate. So this idea of rate lock, right, or so these golden handcuffs of the very low mortgage rates over the last couple of years are keeping people tied to their home as they wait to see if rates will come down a bit, so that moving doesn't seem like such a huge change, such a huge increase in the rate that they're going to have to pay on their home loan.
And that obviously takes place even if people are at that retirement age and they move to a different part of the country where maybe it's not quite as expensive.
Right. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of people just taking a wait and see approach right now, hoping that as we saw inflation begin to come down, the Federal Reserve will be a little bit less aggressive on rates. We might start to see mortgage rates fall. In fact, we did see rates tick down quite substantially last week, down 0.5 percentage point. And I think people are sort of holding out hope that as we head into 2023, rates will begin to stabilize and people will be able to pick back up on those decisions to move, whether they're related to retirement or upsizing or downsizing. But there is, like I said, a lot of wait and see in the market.
And then for some specific areas in the DC Metro, obviously, you look at the whole picture at Bright MLS, but in DC itself, what are you seeing in terms? I remember during the pandemic, the condo market was very, very hot. And what are you seeing now?
Well, we're really seeing a slowdown across product types. And I think that's what's made this a little bit different than during the run-up, where people were interested in different types of homes, like during different periods of the pandemic. And very early on, condos were actually not in very high demand. People were very uninterested in living in very close proximity to one another. And really the exurbs, the further out suburban jurisdictions, were really getting more and more demand. As COVID has eased and we're coming back into, an environment where maybe employers are calling workers back into the office, we've actually started to see a little bit of a pickup in buyer interest in the closer in communities where commuting, again, is something we have to think about, and where getting into the office is something we have to think about. And so we're seeing that, even though buyer traffic is lower inside the district proper, we're still seeing that there are some people who need to be close in for work or who want to be close in now that the pandemic has passed, by and large, or hopefully, and they want to be close to amenities and services.
And so let's just chat for a second about the rental market, because as you know, you mentioned the prices are still high, inflation and interest rates are high. So some people are saying, okay, I can't afford to buy anything. Maybe I can just rent. How is that looking?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people have been doing. In fact, we saw that over the last couple of years. We saw many people who felt like they were being priced out of the for sale market were turning to the rental market. And actually the incomes of renters in the Washington area went up, meaning that more and more higher income renters were renting or staying in a rental unit instead of moving into homeownership as they saw home prices rising. I think there might be a little bit of good news on the rental front. We have seen more new construction of multifamily housing. While the pace of new construction of single-family homes and even townhomes has been down, there's a lot of new apartment construction coming online. The one sort of challenge there is most of that new product is very high-end rental housing. We don't have, and we haven't had for quite some time, sufficient amount of more moderate income rental housing, and that's going to take some time to bring those types of apartments online to meet that very underserved, more moderate income rental housing market.
And there's just not as much money to be made, to just be perfectly blunt. When people make that, are they getting subsidies from some of these local counties or states or federals in order to be able to make that more moderately priced?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the builders and developers who are building to the luxury end are, seeing profits in terms of the rents they can charge. But to build rental housing that's affordable to people with more modest means, it almost always involves some type of partnership, either with the local government or through a federal government affordable housing program, simply to make the numbers work, to make it so that a builder can actually build and keep rents low enough to be affordable to people with more modest incomes.
So I know that you cannot look 100% forward into the future, but for folks who are maybe at that age, or they're thinking I need to move, we need a bigger
Sure.
home, we have added a family member, or conversely they're looking at downsizing a little bit. What are you seeing anybody moving in those types of directions, or
Yeah.
you said people are sort of sitting on the sidelines for now?
Yeah, we are seeing, I think it is going to be probably the slowest fourth quarter housing market that the Washington area has seen in quite some time. I think there is a lot of waiting and seeing. I'll say a couple of things on looking ahead. First, if anyone tells you they know exactly where the housing market is going in 2023, I would take it all with a grain of salt. There are so many moving pieces. What I do expect that we'll see is that there may be some more opportunities going into 2023 as interest rates begin to moderate and maybe mortgage rates start to stabilize. People who have put off their moves because of those high rates, whether it is downsizing or whether, through getting married or having children and you need to buy a bigger place, I think there's going to be a little bit more inventory available as we head into the beginning of 2023. I don't think anyone's going to find any big discounts on prices, but again, buyers might have a little bit more leverage, certainly more leverage than they had during the pandemic, and they may be able to find what they're looking for. I don't anticipate with the winter holidays that there's going to be a lot of new listings coming onto the market if people have been waiting, and it might really have to be until after the first of the year.
Well, thank you so much for that look forward, and just for helping us understand what's happening in our local real estate market. I've been speaking today with Dr. Lisa Sturtevant. She is a real estate economist with Bright MLS, and I just want to thank you so much for helping us put some of this into perspective for us who are on the outside going, what? What's happening? So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
And join us again next week at this same time for DMV Spotlight. I'm Barbara Britt.